Let us take a moment and imagine you're holding an engraved invitation to the most exclusive event in America, knowing that this single piece of paper represents the difference between social existence and social death in Gilded Age society. Yes, the address printed in elegant script not only indicates a location, it also marks the coordinates of absolute power, where one woman's taste in wallpaper could influence fashion trends and her seating arrangements could make or break business deals worth millions. You see, Caroline Astor transformed residential real estate into instruments of social control so sophisticated that her ballroom capacity literally defined the boundaries of American high society for generations. Her mansions were carefully constructed theaters where she performed the role of America's social queen, while her guests competed desperately for supporting roles in her elaborately choreographed productions. From the moment she decided where to live, entire neighborhoods would transform as society's elite followed her lead, like moths drawn to the most exclusive flame money could buy. Therefore, in today's episode of Old Money Mansions, we uncover the mansions of Mrs. Astor that ruled Gilded Age society. If you think today's Manhattan real estate market is ruthless, spare a thought for Caroline Schermerhorn Astor, who built America's most exclusive social empire from a relatively modest brownstone that now lies buried beneath the Empire State Building's Art Deco foundations. Standing at the southwest corner of 5th Avenue and 34th Street, this four-story residence measured a respectable 50 by 107 feet. Its Nova Scotia freestone accents lending dignity to window dressings, architraves, and cornices that whispered wealth rather than screaming it. The building's most distinctive architectural feature was its double stoop, flanked by Corinthian columns that suggested classical learning without academic pretension. A walled garden and fountain separated the property from 338 Fifth Avenue, home to William's brother, John Jacob Astor III, creating a family compound that would make modern dynasties weep with envy. The exterior's understated elegance masked interiors designed for serious social combat. Guests entering for Mrs. Astor's legendary annual January ball would pass through a wide hall into 3 connected drawing rooms, where their hostess received them standing regally before her life-size portrait by Carolus Duran. The formal English Regency dining room underwent a dramatic transformation into glittering white and gold Louis XVI style, while the refined Adams-style drawing room received an equally flamboyant makeover in rich golden rococo with profusions of painted frescoes. The mansion's ballroom, though modest by later Gilded Age standards, could accommodate exactly 400 guests, a number that would become synonymous with American social exclusivity. In 1854, William Backhouse Astor Sr. demonstrated the kind of paternal generosity that would make today's helicopter parents blush, gifting his son, William Jr., and new daughter-in-law, Caroline Webster Schermerhorn, a prime Manhattan parcel as a wedding present. The couple constructed their residence in 1862 during Fifth Avenue's transformation from Country Road to America's most prestigious address. The house rose on former Astor Family farmland acquired through John Jacob Astor's prescient real estate investments in Manhattan's northward expansion, proving that location has always been everything in New York property development. The mansion's conception reflected the old money philosophy of the Schermerhorn-Astor alliance. Wealth should be substantial, but never ostentatious. This restraint faced serious challenge when A.T. Stewart's marble palazzo rose directly across Fifth Avenue in 1869, designed by architect John Kellam with European grandeur that forced Caroline to reconsider her home's relatively modest appearance. From the 1870s through 1890s, 350 Fifth Avenue served as the undisputed headquarters of New York society. Mrs. Astor's annual January ball became America's most coveted invitation, with guests arriving in elaborate gowns and carriages to dance until dawn. The house reached peak influence during the 1880s when Mrs. Astor, alongside Ward McAllister, codified the famous 400, the precise number of people who could fit comfortably in her ballroom and whose lineage could be traced back at least 3 generations. The winter social season from November through February revolved entirely around Mrs. Astor's schedule, with her annual ball serving as the crowning event of each year's festivities. The mansion met its inglorious end in 1895, when Mrs. Astor, worn down by construction noise from the Waldorf Hotel built next door by her nephew William Waldorf Astor, finally abandoned her home of over 30 years. The property was sold and replaced by the Astoria Hotel, which John Jacob Astor IV built to compete with his cousin's establishment. The two hotels merged to become the legendary Waldorf Astoria Hotel, operating from 1897 until 1929. The entire complex was demolished to make way for the Empire State Building, completed in 1931. Today, the site at 350 Fifth Avenue is occupied by the lower floors of this Art Deco showpiece, ensuring that Mrs. Astor's original address remains one of the world's most famous locations, albeit in dramatically different form. From this unpretentious brownstone beginning, Caroline Astor would soon discover that social supremacy required architectural theatre on a scale that even her generous father-in-law could never have imagined. When Caroline Astor decided she'd endured quite enough of her nephew's hotel construction racket, she didn't simply move house. She orchestrated the most spectacular architectural revenge plot in Gilded Age history. The Mrs. William B. Aster House dominated the northeast corner of Fifth Avenue and 65th Street, like a Loire Valley chateau that had wandered across the Atlantic and decided Manhattan suited it perfectly. Designed as two separate residences joined by a magnificent glass-domed entrance hall, this colossal French Renaissance gem appeared from the street as one unified palace that could have housed minor European royalty without embarrassment. Caroline Astor claimed the northern half at 841 Fifth Avenue, while her son, John Jacob Astor IV, occupied the southern portion at 840 Fifth Avenue, creating a family fortress that faced Central Park with supreme confidence. The principal entrance led through a domed vestibule into a hall lined with busts of Astor ancestors, because nothing says established dynasty quite like marble relatives glowering at your guests. This opened into the spectacular marble Great Hall, featuring a large cantilevered staircase rising 3 stories high, an architectural flourish that announced serious money before visitors had even removed their gloves. The mansion's crown jewel was the ballroom at the rear, capable of holding 1,200 people, 3 times the capacity of the previous 34th Street residence. The dining room featured black marble walls hung with hunting scene tapestries, black and white marble tiled floors covered with polar bear rugs, and a marble chimneypiece that suggested the Astors took their decorating cues from medieval castles. By the early 1890s, Mrs. Astor had grown weary of the Waldorf Hotel construction noise, prompting what would become the most expensive case of neighbor spite in New York history. In 1894, she commissioned Richard Morris Hunt, the preeminent architect of the Gilded Age, to design a residence befitting her status as American society's undisputed queen. Hunt spent 3 months touring Europe for inspiration, ultimately settling on early 16th century French Renaissance chateau style, reminiscent of the Château de Blois. Construction began in 1894 on a lot measuring 100 by 100 feet, with identical mirror-image floor plans divided by a central partition wall but connected by the shared ballroom and entrance hall. Jules Allard, the famous interior designer responsible for countless Gilded Age mansions, created exquisitely detailed French-style interiors that transported visitors directly to Versailles. From 1896 until Mrs. Astor's death in 1908, the Fifth Avenue mansion served as the epicenter of American high society. The massive ballroom hosted elaborate entertainments for up to 1,200 guests, with the bronze-domed reception hall featuring spouting dolphins and infant Neptune fountains, creating suitably theatrical entrances. The mansion became a New York City attraction in its own right, with newspapers covering house parties extensively. After Mrs. Astor's death in 1908, John Jacob Astor IV converted the double mansion into a single residence by removing the central partition wall. The transformation was completed shortly before his tragic death aboard the Titanic in 1912, ensuring that the mansion's golden age proved as brief as it was brilliant. The mansion was demolished around 1926, its brief but spectacular existence proving that even the grandest architectural statements remain vulnerable to Manhattan's relentless development pressures. Today, the location houses Temple Emmanuel, ensuring this prestigious address continues serving as a gathering place for New York's elite, though in vastly different spiritual rather than social capacity. But Caroline Astor's architectural ambitions extended far beyond Manhattan's increasingly congested streets, reaching toward oceanfront splendor that would make her summer palace the envy of European aristocracy. While Manhattan provided the perfect stage for winter social warfare, Caroline Astor understood that true aristocratic authority required a seaside fortress where America's elite could pursue the delicate art of competitive leisure. Beechwood commanded 9 dramatic oceanfront acres at 580 Bellevue Avenue, its 39 rooms sprawling across 16,400 square feet of Italianate magnificence that gazed imperiously across the Atlantic toward the European courts that inspired its grandeur. The handsome 3-story structure exhibited remarkable balance and symmetry, with graciously proportioned interiors and expansive windows that captured both the mansion's elegant atmosphere and stunning ocean views. Richard Morris Hunt's spectacular waterfront ballroom represented the mansion's most theatrical achievement, conceived with an oceanic theme that would make Neptune himself weep with envy. Oak parquet floors laid in wave-like reverse herringbone patterns rippled beneath guests' feet, while seaweed-shaped brass sconces cast shimmering light across bas-reliefs depicting Poseidon and Aphrodite in appropriately dramatic poses. The ballroom incorporated 800 panes of glass, including mirrored walls and abundant French doors that transformed evening entertainments into underwater fantasies. Beyond the ballroom, Beachwood boasted a well-appointed library, an elegant dining room dominated by a grand marble fireplace, and a charming music room adorned with exquisite wallpaper imported directly from Parisian ateliers. Beechwood's story began between 1852 and 1853, when wealthy New Yorker Daniel Parrish commissioned this marine villa as his seaside retreat. The initial design emerged from the collaborative genius of renowned architects Andrew Jackson Downing and Calvert Vauquer, though tragedy struck when Downing's planned July 1852 visit never occurred due to his death in a steamboat accident en route to New York. Vaux completed the mansion with distinctive Palladian spirit and showcased the design in his influential book Villas and Cottages, published in 1857. Fire damaged the original structure in 1855, leading to reconstruction with significant alterations in 1856, with Vaux supervising the rebuilding that would establish the foundation for future grandeur. In 1880, William Backhouse Astor Jr. purchased Beechwood for $190,941.50, a substantial investment that reflected both the property's desirability and the Astor family's commitment to Newport society. Between 1888 and 1890, Mrs. Astor enlisted Richard Morris Hunt to oversee extensive renovations, including the addition of the spectacular ballroom designed to accommodate her famous 400 guests in oceanfront splendor. From 1881 to 1908, Beechwood served as the social epicenter of Newport's Gilded Age summer season, with Mrs. Astor presiding over 8 weeks each year during the summer months. The mansion hosted amazing parties for those fortunate enough to be included in her elite social circle, with the highlight being Mrs. Astor's summer ball that determined social standing for the following year. Hunt's specially designed ballroom could accommodate the full complement of the 400, ensuring that every member of America's social elite could gather under one magnificently decorated roof. When Mrs. Astor died in 1908, Beechwood passed to her son, John Jacob Astor IV, who married his second wife, Madeline, in the ballroom in 1911, creating memories that would haunt the mansion after his Titanic tragedy. After John's death in 1912, the property passed to his widow Madeline, who famously converted the entire third floor into her personal walk-in closet, a decision that would make modern fashion influencers genuflect with respect. Following decades of changing ownership, Beechwood was transformed into Newport's only living history museum, featuring actors portraying daily lives of those who inhabited the estate. In January 2010, Oracle Corporation founder Larry Ellison purchased the property for $10.5 million, launching a comprehensive restoration project designed to return Beechwood to its 1881 appearance. Ellison has invested more than $100 million in meticulous restoration, overseen by architect John Grosvenor, creating the Beechwood Art Museum to house his collection of 18th and 19th century European art. The project includes rebuilding the dramatic arched loggia destroyed by Hurricane Carol in 1954 and restoring other original Hunt features that had been lost to time and weather. Yet even Beechwood's oceanfront majesty couldn't satisfy the Astor family's appetite for territorial expansion, as their Hudson Valley estate would prove that true aristocratic power required dominion over vast inland empires as well as coastal kingdoms. Beyond the glittering ballrooms and marble halls of urban grandeur lay Ferncliffe, a 2,800-acre working estate that revealed the Astor family's most ambitious vision, creating a feudal kingdom in the Hudson River Valley that would endure long after Manhattan's mansions crumbled into memory. Ferncliffe Farm sprawled across Rhinebeck's rolling hills like a self-contained principality, featuring a substantial mansion built in 1874 for William Backhouse Astor Jr. and Caroline, though she rarely graced it with her presence, preferring European springs to pastoral American retreats. The estate encompassed dairy and poultry operations alongside horse-breeding stables, where William pursued his passion for equestrian activities with the dedication of a man who understood that true aristocracy required mastery over both land and livestock. The original mansion was greatly expanded over decades by subsequent generations, with John Jacob Astor IV commissioning Stanford White in 1902 to design a remarkable sports pavilion known as the Ferncliffe Casino. This 40,000-square-foot structure included one of America's first indoor swimming pools, along with an indoor tennis court, squash court, and bowling alley that transformed country house entertaining into year-round athletic theatre. The building, inspired by the Grand Trianon at Versailles, featured resplendent arched windows and marble columns that brought French classical architecture to the Hudson Valley with characteristic Astor audacity. Multiple ancillary buildings dotted the estate: a gatehouse designed by Louis Ehlers in 1879, various staff quarters, dairy barns, a tea house, and a greenhouse imported directly from England. The property connected to the outside world via the F&R Road, Ferncliffe to Rhinebeck Road, with impressive iron gates dating from 1895, marking the main entrance like medieval fortifications protecting modern American nobility. William Backhouse Astor Jr. established Ferncliffe around 1853 through purchasing several small farms in the Rhinebeck area, consolidating scattered agricultural holdings into a cohesive estate. The location was chosen partly due to its proximity to Rokeby, his mother Margaret Rebecca Armstrong's childhood estate, where he had spent many summers absorbing the rhythms of Hudson Valley life. The estate's conception represented a return to the land philosophy popular among America's wealthy elite during the mid-19th century, when industrial fortunes sought legitimacy through agricultural pursuits. The original mansion was built in 1874 and expanded significantly when John Jacob Astor IV inherited the property in 1892, transforming it from simple country estate into sophisticated retreat. Ferncliffe reached its zenith during the early 20th century under John Jacob Astor IV's ownership, when the estate became a showcase of American luxury and technological innovation. The Stanford White-designed sports pavilion attracted the era's most prominent social figures, who traveled from New York and beyond to experience country house entertaining at its most sophisticated. The property included a private railroad siding for the family's exclusive use emphasizing the scale and sophistication of operations that rivaled European estates in both size and amenities. After John Jacob Astor IV's death on the Titanic in 1912, the estate passed to his son William Vincent Astor, who continued expanding property holdings while gradually moving from the original mansion into the remodeled Stanford White Sports Pavilion. Vincent eventually demolished the original 1874 mansion in the 1940s to accommodate this change, transforming the sports pavilion into Astor Courts as his primary residence. Following Vincent Astor's death in 1959, the massive estate was broken up and divided among various purposes that reflected changing American attitudes toward landed wealth. Brooke Astor inherited the property and made several significant charitable donations that transformed the landscape permanently. In 1964, she donated 200 acres to the Rhinebeck Rotary, establishing the Ferncliffe Forest Nature Preserve and Game Refuge with the stipulation that it remain forever wild. Other portions found new purposes. Some parcels became private homes, including the gatehouse and staff quarters, while a significant portion was donated for establishing arch care at Ferncliffe Nursing Home and Rehabilitation Center. The Stanford White Sports Pavilion, now known as Astor Courts, was purchased by Eric and Wendy Schmidt in 2016 and underwent extensive restoration by PBDW architects and Samuel White, Stanford White's great-grandson. Caroline Astor's residential empire perfectly encapsulates the Gilded Age philosophy that architecture should serve as both social fortress and theatrical stage, with each property designed to reinforce her position as America's undisputed social queen. Her homes evolved from family inheritance to personal statements, ultimately becoming national landmarks that defined an entire era's approach to wealth, taste, and exclusivity. The dramatic contrasts in how these properties have survived, from complete demolition to billionaire restoration, reflect changing American attitudes toward both historical preservation and old money traditions. While some vanished beneath skyscrapers and others transformed into religious institutions, the continuing fascination with Mrs. Astor's world proves that Gilded Age glamour retains its power to captivate, even when the mansions themselves have crumbled into memory. And now, we'd love to see you in the comments. Which property of Mrs. Astor do you believe was the most tastefully decorated? We look forward to hearing your personal taste, and, with that said, thanks for joining us for another episode of Old Money Mansions. Cheers until the next time.